Sometimes I get curious if people listen to the intro music every time or just skip right into the actual program. I'm not saying either one is really a right or wrong idea, I'm just wondering. And so I like to break it up every once in a while by having some kind of intro here. But that's really all I had to say, so time for the music that you may or may not skip.
Stranded in space on a ship crashing into the atmosphere of an unknown planet, Emile Spencer knew that the only way to survive would be by his own wits and guile. He vowed that somehow he would find and slay the titanic cosmic beast that put him in this predicament, VY572. With every installment, we follow Emile's explorations and discoveries on this journey of revenge against all odds. I'm Midnight Jester, and this is the Left Behind Starforge series.
This week's recap should be relatively quick and simple because the last episode was the one where very quickly Emile got thrown in the brig himself. He was not able to convince Dash and Vert to help him get the prisoner, Zoya Silva, to stay in his cell. Zoya got out, and the three of them very quickly overwhelmed Emile, threw him in the brig. A good portion of the episode was Fern trying to break him out in kind of a prolonged combat scene. Fern's strategy, which worked exceptionally well, was to get inside of Vert's power armor and kind of puppet him from the inside. Like, being that Fern is amorphous, they were able to just kind of exude enough strength to overpower Vert and move the power armor, knock out Zoya in the process, eventually get Vert's hand on the pad that would open up the cell and let Emile out, and once that happened, very quickly everything calmed back down. Between Zoya being knocked out and Fern having just completely overpowered Vert from the inside, there was not much reason to resist anymore. And basically we ended after Emile pleaded with everybody else to just help him take down the Wooden Heart, the force that's powering Zoya from the inside. Vert and Dash agreed, and Emile suggested that perhaps the weakness to the Wooden Heart could be found on Anubis, the planet around which it orbits. I mean, it's inside a ship orbiting Anubis. Perhaps the secrets lie there. And we left off with Emile kind of programming the coordinates for that. So quite simply, I'm going to get right back into the action right from there. We're not going to do any kind of vignettes or anything, partly because I don't think there's any need to, and partly because we're already at max momentum, so there's no mechanical benefit to doing that. Anyhow, Emile sets the coordinates in. Let's start this by we've done this trip before. You know, the trip from Anubis to the still unnamed planet. That was the one that wound up going through the wormhole and everything. Emile has trailblazed that course. So we're just going to start off with a set a course move as Emile kind of backtracks over this, takes them back towards the wormhole and does the calculations in reverse basically to just get you back to Anubis. Hopefully this time without the same kind of problems that arise inside the wormhole. But setting a course is a supply move, and we've got full supply. So we get... I had a weak hit. Now, I could burn all of this momentum right now to turn it into a strong hit. The difference would be whether or not there's a complication when we get there. On a strong hit, there wouldn't be. Everything's great, and we take +1 momentum, which again, we don't even need. On a weak hit, we arrive but face a cost or complication. So we would either suffer costs en route, which is when one of our little trackers would have to take a -2, or two of them would make a -1, or we face a complication at the destination and envision what we encounter. Now, particularly for the sake of getting this session started, I mean, narratives need a little bit of conflict. I'm not really all that inclined to get rid of this weak hit anyway, so let's keep it as is. And with that in mind, I'm also kind of thinking of going for the face a complication at the destination, envision what you encounter. Now, we've done a lot lately with complications involving the Wooden Heart kind of bringing the captain back alive and having him be an issue. We've explored that territory plenty. Right now I want to leave him, if not fully passed out, at the very least still imprisoned and not really a problem anymore. So let's not go back to that well again. If we need to, I'll roll an oracle to determine whether or not he's conscious. So let's see, a complication at the destination. I kind of like the idea that this complication might be having to do with like either Dash or Vert having some history with the people of Anubis, and they like only bring it up once finally getting here. That could be cool. Another one that we could do that would be kind of a similar idea as far as like there being tension with third parties. We could do it where this complication could be related to advancing the agenda of like the opposition to making amends to the people of Concord. Like we could definitely do another series of Vault Hunters showing up. My concern with doing that is, one, we've done that before relatively recently, and we've also kind of explored that tension a fair amount. I don't want it to wind up being the same narrative beats over and over again where like another team comes and, well, actually, yes. I'm indeed going to do new Vault Hunters arrive. What'll be different this time is, of course, there are fellow Vault Hunters on board, and maybe that'll change exactly how this goes down. Because again, this wasn't a full-on miss. We're not waylaid by a significant threat and paying the price. That's not what's happening here. It's just a complication. And so I think the reason why this is complicated is perhaps Emile and the Stardust are able to, like, they're hidden in the floating debris around Anubis, and they see the Vault Hunter ship arrive. They see that in time to be able to hide effectively. And so the complication is, of course, if they leave this area of debris and start deorbiting towards Anubis, that really will draw the attention more and perhaps draw the fire of the Vault Hunters if they've not been reached out to first. For whatever reason, this Vault Hunter ship seems to have an indication that they're searching in the right place. Because we can see them like scanning pieces of debris and looking around like they're searching for a ship. Or perhaps they're just looking for appropriate salvage. We don't know. But we see the view inside the cockpit as Emile, everybody's in there right now. Emile, Vert, Dash, Fern, all of them just seeing what's going on out there. They've not yet made any kind of radio contact, and the tension is about what exactly to do in this moment. Emile turns to Vert and Dash and says, "Well, we can't go down to the planet. As soon as I try and deorbit and go down to Anubis' surface, pretty sure they're going to spot us. Now, my scans indicate this seems to be yet another Vault Hunter ship. I don't know if you recognize it or not, but actually, why don't we start that way? Maybe Emile would be running scans of his own because he's aware of the other ship. By all accounts, they're not aware of him yet. He's got the drop on them. So he's got an opportunity here to try and gather some information by doing some long-range scans, getting any info about what ship this is, whose crew it is. Maybe Vert and Dash are familiar with them. Maybe not. Maybe they have history. Maybe they don't. All that sort of questioning. Emile's going to try and do this sort of long-range scan. I don't think I have any assets that are going to especially affect this. This is just going to be a simple, direct gather information. So we're making a wits roll, and we get... Okay, another weak hit that we could, again, turn into a strong hit if we so chose. I mean, we're going to have the opportunity to burn on basically every roll, considering we have plus 10 momentum. And so it's really all going to be, what is the moment where it feels worth it to turn something into a strong hit? Probably. I mean, all it takes is one of the dice being a 10 for that to not be the case. So weak hit is when what we learn is a little bit complicating, and we would take plus 1 momentum. And strong hit would be even more momentum we couldn't use. It would just be clear action and specific helpful information. So again, I think the moment that we're exploring right now benefits from this being a weak hit, not a strong hit. So we learn what ship this is, and I'm probably going to roll on some oracles to get a few ideas about what we discover. But we also get some complication, and I feel like the easiest way to represent that would be that indeed... Well, there are a few ways to go about that. One could be that the information is problematic. It could also just be that the process of scanning them alerts the other ship to the fact that they've been scanned, and now they're like more immediately on the lookout for this hidden ship, and the clock would be ticking. Yeah, I like that as a different version of complicating the quest. It's not that the information is complicated, it's that the act of gathering it has made things more complicated. So now I'm going to treat this like we just have kind of a moment before they're going to find us, because I think they can kind of backtrace it a little bit. I could make this an entire clock, but I don't want this to be like the whole session dealing with just this question. So I'm going to give myself the opportunity to make like one more move. But first we need to figure out, what did we actually learn? So let's roll on some oracles, learn a little bit more about what is this ship, and what's the crew on it, what are they known for, and importantly, even though we know they are Vault Hunters, that much is established. I suppose Emile doesn't know that officially yet, but that part's not going to change. So let's see. We are in the... Well, let's get them a name. You definitely have pulled up just that kind of like metadata that the ship has. This is apparently a ship called the Beowulf, which I kind of like that for a Vault Hunter ship, considering they go on these like epic quests to seek out all the... to do their own like national treasure adventure to find all of the evidence they can get to eventually find a vault and open it up and explore it. Like they're doing Nicolas Cage adventure movies over there. So they're the Beowulf. And on first look, we see that it's leaking radiation. Well, I can see why that would be a little bit complicated in its own right. And that's actually kind of interesting. That makes me reconsider whether or not the complication is that they discovered it, because that's a complication right on its own. It's still probably going to be both. But it's clearly leaking radiation. We can tell that from the scans. I could roll on its mission, but actually I suppose I'm not going to roll. It occurs to me that they're not necessarily hunting down Emile. Our characters have no way of knowing that. They just know it's a Vault Hunter ship. For all we know, they could be searching for information to lead them to a vault, hunting vaults. There's an Oracle for Starship mission, but I don't think we'd have any reason to know that. I don't imagine that's just publicly, like, all ships kind of broadcast, like, our continuing mission to explore new reaches of space. Like, it's not that sort of thing. I'm going to roll one more first look to see if it's something that could pair in pretty well. So we have leaking radiation and heavy armor. Makes sense. So this ship is ready to throw down. And importantly, the Stardust is not. It's combat capable, sure, but it's not what I would describe as particularly heavily armored. It's not noteworthy in that way. And the heavy armor seems to imply that it's got some good weaponry. I think one thing that would be in that same kind of gather information, reachable stuff from like scanning the ship and what's publicly available and registered about this ship, probably whatever was most recently, like the captain registered with the ship. That would probably be accessible in Emile's current repository of ships, that he's like searching on the ship's computer for all of the appropriate... It's like he's running somebody's plates, basically, right out of the cop car. Like he's got a database of information about registered ships. So the captain of the Beowulf, they go by the call sign of Tycoon. And Tycoon, let's give him a roll, because I like the idea of a... Like, yeah, you might be the captain of the ship, but in addition to that, like, what are you good at? And rolling character roll helps me with that idea. A spacer. I feel like we got that. Did we get that for Zoya? I know certainly Zoya did wind up going out into the vacuum of space in a suit and going, like, he basically did a spacer kind of role. I don't remember if we officially determined that's what Zoya was good at or not. But for the sake of, I want to see something a little bit different, that was an 87 roll. I'm going to see what 78 is instead. 78 would be Scholar. Okay, I like that more, to kind of mix things up a little bit more. So the captain of this ship would be noteworthy for really being the one who's done the research role. Like, maybe they don't throw down in the same way, but they've got the book knowledge and the studying all the maps and like solving the old ancient riddles and stuff. They're the one that's going to crack codes, read the ancient Sanskrit. They're really crucial to the actual hunting of vaults, which does suggest it is a little bit more likely that maybe that's just what they're doing right now. That maybe a captain like that would be less concerned with the bounty hunting aspect. But I don't know. Maybe they have a crew that's a little bit more bloodthirsty. With a couple of those details established, now I'm going to make a few just ask the Oracle rolls to determine a few key things that are going to affect this situation. By far the most important one is whether or not there's any history between Dash and Vert and either Tycoon or just the Beowulf in general. So I'm going to just put that as a 50-50 because I don't think we have any reason to think it would be more or less likely. Some Vault Hunters know each other, some don't. We don't have anything that influences this, so I could see it being interesting either way. Do they have history? The Oracle says no. Pretty solidly no as well. Yeah, that's so much of a no that even on almost certain they wouldn't know each other, so they do not. They wouldn't have no matter the odds. I'd also like to know, like, whether or not they personally have history. Does this ship have a reputation that Dash and Vert are familiar with. Which I guess is kind of like a history, but one-sided. But does this ship have notoriety? And again, I don't think there's any reason to think that's more or less likely. So 50-50, does this ship have a reputation? Yes. Okay. Since they would be somewhat familiar with this ship, I'm going to roll an action and theme oracle now to help inspire, like, something happened in their past. Or maybe multiple times, but this ship is famous amongst the Vault Hunters. And our action and theme are manipulate and fellowship. I read those words, and what I think about is kind of like being a whip in the Senate. I read those words, and I think about being like a key to power, or like they speak for a lot of people. They've got a lot of Vault Hunters turn to this ship if there's any kind of voting involved or anything. Like they've got a voting block behind them. And so perhaps the Beowulf has been around for a very long time, and the Tycoon as well. They've been Vault Hunters like since Vault Hunters began banding together at all, and perhaps a little bit afterwards, but they've been around for a very long time and have amassed a good deal of respect and voting block. Like they have sway within the Vault Hunters, which would be something that, like, much as the claim is that only Valkyrie can dismiss this whole, like, public enemy number one thing. But if this is a ship that has a lot of sway, and Emile is made to understand that, if Emile convinced these people that he's good, maybe they could put their thumb on the scale and get Valkyrie to remove that. They might have leverage. Like, this is a valuable opportunity. And perhaps the reason that they're especially famous, I want to come up with, like, this is almost like a little vignette. I don't know that it's really going to matter, but I'd love one particular example of a time that they, like, went against the grain or something, or like we're not willing to buckle and got something to go their way. Because I don't see the Vault Hunters as being like, I don't see it as being like the kind of organization that has like a Senate or like a lot of voting as a member. Like, it's not that it's that, because it's just a loose affiliation of people with the same goals that share information and come to each other's aid and stuff, because they're all outlaws. And so they see it as beneficial to watch each other's back, both against the government and against just other people declared enemies. I don't think that it's frequent that they do a full-on, like, organizational vote on their policies or anything like that. You know, it's like a bunch of pirates working together. There's only so much this command structure goes up. But I still want this moment where, like, they really rallied people to their side, or rallied the Vault Hunters to their side of things. And I'm going to say, very famously in the Vault Hunters, there is a vault that became very public information. Like, it was not all that well concealed. They were quick to get to it. They had all the resources to be able to start plumbing the depths and finding out what was inside. Because I think key to the very idea of the Vault Hunters is, I don't know that any one of them has ever actually been inside a vault. I think that's the dream. They know they're out there and they know they're forbidden. But in this game anyway, I don't think anybody's ever actually been inside one, not even a Vault Hunter. But this was one, and partly it's because they're so hard to find. There are so many little trail bits and puzzles you have to find along the way, and even when you get there, even getting inside is its own kind of puzzle. Like, they're sealed so well, and they're so just arcane and weird. Just getting inside is its own, like you could make an epic vow out of exploring one vault. Very few are ever found. It's mostly hunting leads on where they might be found. And this was one that was known about. They could see it. It was well established. It was just like floating out in space in this. Why don't we say, I'm gonna determine a random region that it was in. Let's say that, okay, I've randomly determined that it was just in the Outlands. It was not full on in the Terminus, and it was not all the way in the Expanse, but, you know, in the Outlands, floating in space, probably in a, like, it's not even in a sector exactly. It was like this weird location that was, it's like on the boundary line between sectors in a way that doesn't even fully make sense. But it was in a part of space that was like, it's like it was specifically left off the map. So, like, if you were to follow the sector maps and you looked closely enough, you could see that on the boundary line between one sector and the next, there actually was... There were areas between those two sectors that were not listed and registered. But if you went there manually, if you didn't follow the maps, you could find this area that was unlisted, basically, and that's where the vault was. That part doesn't matter as much. But the point is that they had access to one, and the Beowulf and Tycoon specifically was able to convince people that this was actually a trap. It was too obvious. They got there, like, yes, it was still difficult, but he scrutinized the situation and thought, this is a trap. If we go there, the Imperium is going to be waiting to capture anybody who gets there. Because this was after, like, they had all already been indicated as too dangerous. This was a way to determine the location and lure in a bunch of Vault Hunters at once. And the Imperium was going to be lying in wait, cloaked perhaps by the vault itself, heavily armed, ready to ambush and take down a fuckload of Vault Hunters. And he convinced everybody to back off. And the more they looked into it, and like, I don't think they ever officially proved it in that moment or anything, but the more people looked into it and talked around and like exchanged information over favors and drinks at bars and stuff and did a little spycraft, and all the things seemed to corroborate that he was right. It was absolutely an operation that then failed, and so the Beowulf is largely responsible for having utterly saved the Vault Hunters. And so perhaps because of that, his wisdom is rather prized. People are primed to take what he has to say very seriously, even if it goes against everything they want to do, because you better believe that was a hard sell. But he was diplomatic enough that he was able to convince everybody that it was too easy and is not worth it, and that it was a trap. Actually, I suppose it would make sense that, like, probably not literally everybody listened to him, especially if they were able to find out that he was so right. Like, it's probably that a lot of people did, and those who didn't totally got taken out. They got ambushed. It became clear that he was right after the fact. Those who listened benefited. And so now those who are left are the ones who are more primed to listen to Tycoon when stuff comes up. Anyway, Emile does this scan and learns this sort of thing, and the Beowulf is alerted to the fact that they have been scanned. Vert and Dash have indeed communicated some amount of this. I think that Vert would probably have... I don't think he holds too much back. He's not one to really play it close to the vest, so when Emile announces that this is a ship called the Beowulf, Vert would have been like, "Captain goes by the name Tycoon, yeah?" "Yeah, that's right. That's what it says here." "Yeah, he's a smart cookie. If he's the one hunting for you, he's gonna find you." "Got a bit of a reputation, huh?" "Oh yeah. Every Vault Hunter knows about Tycoon. Of course, he hasn't always been on the Beowulf. I believe he's moved from ship to ship over the years, but he's something of a celebrity in our people. Very wise. Hard to get the drop on him." And then, like, it's at that moment where the Beowulf is clearly scanning back and trying to find, like, who has been scanning them. And it's, like, visibly, it's something you can see visibly. And so Vert is able to kind of, like, gesture out towards the window and go, "Right on cue. Seem you've drawn his attention." "Is he someone who can be reasoned with?" "If he's anything, he's reasonable." "Yes, no doubt about that. Definitely more one to use words than violence in his pursuits. However, you will note that that ship over there is certainly ready for violence if it were to come up." "Do you think you two could get him to stand down? If you hailed him over the radio, you could talk to him as fellow Vault Hunters and make this not an ordeal. I mean, exercising a little bit of trust here that you're not going to, like, fuck me over, but do you think you could if I let you on the radio?" And let's make that a compel roll. Because, like, Emile phrased it as a question, but it's basically, like, if we skip to the end, like, Emile is asking them to do that. Get on the radio, talk this situation down on his behalf. So we're going to make a heart roll here. And we get... All right. This will sound familiar. We have a weak hit that we could turn into a strong hit if we burned momentum. And also sounding familiar, I don't know that I feel like doing that. I think I'm going to leave it a weak hit and throw away yet more 1 momentum. And after we envision the counteroffer, because they'll agree to the conditions, but it comes with a demand or complication. And I feel like the complication is going to be that, like, both Vert and Dash have a lot of respect for the Beowulf and for Tycoon specifically. I keep saying both, but I think it really is. It's Tycoon that has the reputation. Because as they said, like, he's moved from ship to ship. I feel like he's just a very strong asset that's been around the block enough that, like, he's like headhunted by other Vault Hunters who really want to give themselves a leg up. So he moves around as necessary. But Tycoon they have a lot of respect for him. And so the complication is that if this turns south, what are we doing characters? Like, I'm more than willing to reach out and try and speak to him, Vault Hunter to Vault Hunter, and make sure this goes peaceably, but do be aware that if he gets wind that this is your ship, and I expect he will, if he has a problem with that and is looking to turn you in, I will not let you fire on that ship. I'm willing to put a lot of things aside for a time, but surrender must be the only course. You truly would be an enemy to our people to do anything against any ship holding Tycoon. Is that clear? Yeah, I understand. And do you agree to those terms? Because as soon as we reach out, he is certainly going to be turning his full eye on you. And there's an opportunity here to instead just try and hide. But once I get on the radio, there's no turning back. So do you agree? What would Emile do here? What would he think is a better choice? I know that I want him to interact with Tycoon because I want him to see more. I want to see more of this and give Emile this opportunity to kind of make progress on that vow in a different way. So I'm just going to say that indeed Emile is willing to do it. I mean, he's the one who pitched the idea to begin with, granted before he knew this complication, but still, he sticks around with it and says, yeah, I promise you I won't fire on the ship. I'll do this diplomatically. Very well then. So how are we going to do this? Because Dash is not a connection or anything. He's not like he can help us with this. He's the one doing it, but I'm not going to just make new stats for people every time they roll. Like, I still want to do this through Emile's stats. So why don't we say that just the fact that Dash is saying this, we're going to still use Emile's heart probably on this. Like, it's probably going to be a compel move to convince the other ship that everything's cool, more or less. It's going to be a hard thing because we're certainly not threatening or, well, I guess you could argue that it's a lie or swindle depending on exactly what he has to say. Like, if he conceals the fact that Emile is here, that would be a shadow move. But I think that the go would be more that Emile's not going to hide the fact that he's here. I think they're both going to be on the radio, and it's more that Dash is going to back him up. That is going to help make sure that it changes the fiction, really. Like, it changes the stakes of it. We're not going to get any kind of bonus or anything, but it changes the circumstance as Emile gets on and says, and the reason they're doing this, of course, is that Emile figures that as soon as the Beowulf fully sees the ship and does its own scans, they're going to see that, well, I guess Emile isn't registered as the captain, but this ship is known about, like, he's not registered in an official database as the captain of this ship, but the Vault Hunters sure know that he made off with it. So it's going to be pretty clear pretty fast, so might as well get ahead of that. Dash gets on the radio and says, "This is the Stardusts. Hailing the Beowulf out and around orbit of Anubis. We seem to have encountered each other and are making an official salutation to make sure that we're all on the same page here." And in addition to that, like, perhaps Dash wasn't even going, like, Dash was going to just pretend that there was no Emile on board, and then Emile cuts in, recognizing, like, that's not going to work anyway, and so he adds to it, saying, "And just to get ahead of where you're no doubt going to wind up, yes, the voice you're hearing now is Emile Spencer. However, I'm not alone on this ship." "Indeed not. I myself am Dash of the Vault Hunter ship Tyson, and I'm here with Vert as well. We have this situation well in hand, and simply wanted to make sure you are aware that we have no intentions against you, and we hope that you'll say the same in return. Awaiting your response." So this is basically just a very simple pacification attempt against against that whole crew. Just a very simple compel roll, trying to persuade them to just go in peace. So making another heart roll, and we get... This is again a weak hit that we could turn into a strong hit. So they would have a demand or complication to all of this. And I think the complication might well be... There's like a long pause. And then eventually the radio comes to life again, and we hear from the other end, Tycoon. Tycoon says, "That all sounds very reasonable. I am certainly inclined to not cause any trouble where there isn't trouble already. However, given the notoriety that Emile already has, it's important to me to know that this is not being said under duress. I would have us all meet in person so that we can get this all out on the table appropriately. If you're unwilling to fulfill this request, I'm unfortunately forced to consider this a hostile action, and that you're trying to conceal the truth of the situation, that you have captured these individuals, Vert and Dash, and that it would be my duty to have them freed, and from there things might turn a little bit worse. So are you willing to come aboard my ship and meet in person?" Emile thinks about this for a moment, and he has another idea. He's got a counteroffer to their counteroffer. Their ship, not exactly neutral ground. Emile wants neutral ground. Emile says as much, and I think Emile is going to try and use the situation to his advantage, because he could use as many allies as possible right now on quite the problematic situation that they have around the Wooden Heart. And Emile, through Fern, knows what ship to look for that houses the Wooden Heart. Because Fern had access to that long ago. As you recall, when Fern first subsumed the captain, Zoya Silva, Fern was able to recreate that environment. Fern knows what that looks like. Has perhaps enough details to be able to find it again. So Emile gets back on the radio and says, "I completely understand what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense. However, I hope you don't think I'm foolish enough to just walk over onto your ship. Why don't we find a neutral ground? We are both indeed intending this to be peaceful, so there's no need for anybody to have home territory here. There are a lot of ships in orbit around Anubis that are wrecked. They can't go anywhere, they can't do anything. I'm sure we could find one that would be suitable as a meeting place. I'll go over there myself with Vert and Dash. I ask that you come along with no more than 2 additional people as well, and we can hash this out in person. Does that sound reasonable?" And so again, this is going to be yet another compel roll as just part of this negotiation, since Emile is not technically going along with the demand. He is doing a counteroffer, so it's another heart roll. We're just doing a lot of heart compels this session. All right, and an easy strong hit without even having to do momentum. They'll do what you want or agree to your conditions, take +1. We've missed out on like 5 or 6 momentum so far. Clearly, very quickly, Tycoon gets back on and says, "Your terms are acceptable. We shall choose one of these ships around here." And we're going to do one, like with the radio off, Emile talks to Fern, because I feel like it's come up at some point, maybe not on camera, but like they've talked about a little bit about what Fern saw with the Wooden Heart and like its location on the ship and everything. Emile gets information from Fern enough to be able to identify a particular ship. I'm not going to make a roll out of it just because I guess I'm just going to do a quick oracle move on this to see, can Emile quickly enough determine which ship is the one to find? He's got pretty good information. He knows that clearly when he first encountered the Tyson that they must have been nearby because the captain was encountering the Wooden Heart. Like, he knows it was one of those ships. He knows his coordinates from there. He can narrow it down a lot and then use Fern's information to find out specifically which one. So I think his odds are pretty good. He's got a lot of good information to be able to use his computer and process it pretty quickly. So I'm just going to ask the Oracle, with the odds being likely, can Emile find the ship in time to suggest it as a specific ship to meet on? Nope. And once again, high enough up that even on almost certain that wouldn't have happened. So Emile can't find that ship. At least not fast enough. They're just going to meet on an arbitrary ship then, not the one with the Wooden Heart. So indeed, the ships kind of get into position. And why don't we have this one be... Oh, also we know that their ship is leaking radiation. Almost forgot about that. It was probably only so close we want to get to them. So, in addition, perhaps Emile can try and convince them to leave the ship farther away. Or maybe that's something he'll leave as kind of like a bargaining thing. Like he that's information he knows that maybe somehow they don't. And so he'll leave that just in case it's relevant. Because I want to say that the radiation that it's leaking, it's not like it's blasting it out in all directions in a huge radius or anything like that. I think it's like an engine leak kind of thing where they have an engine that's not going as efficiently because it's leaking radiation. It's leaking radiation out, and so I think as a result, it probably just takes it longer to be able to jump. I think it can fly around regular-like just fine, but Emile knows that it's not going to be as good at pursuing across like jump coordinates because it's not as efficient at jumping right now. So Emile knows that he's going to keep it to himself. They choose an arbitrary ship. They're parked nearby. Emile is going to be... I think it's got to be one that they can just like dock with or something, because there aren't enough spacesuits to go around to take everybody that you talked about. So it would have to be a ship that's got atmosphere on it. It's sealed. It's not just like open to space. They find something like that. It's like it's perhaps not even a ship exactly. It's like a station module that's like disconnected from other stuff, and it's got docking ports and stuff, but it's by all of their scans, they're able to verify, like, it seems to be a relatively neutral, like there's not much here. It's just like a habitation module that's now just like floating in orbit, and it seems to be kind of ideal for the situation. Both ships dock on opposite sides of this. I see it as it's like a spindle where there's like a kind of like a can-shaped middle. That's the habitation module. And then there are arms sticking out on both, like from like the center point on both sides. And like it's a relatively flat can. When I say can, I mean like almost like a tuna can, kind of stubby like that. Spindles come out on either side that have like docking ports. And so the Stardust is on one, the Beowulf is on the other port. They're coming in from opposite sides, and they're going to meet in the middle. Now, this whole process takes at least a little bit of time, and so while they're going through the docking procedure and everything, I want to determine if there's anything that Emile would set up in advance. Okay, so the one thing that does come to mind is Emile's going to need a little bit of leverage over Dash and Vert, because once they're on the station with just a bunch of other Vault Hunters and Emile, they don't really have a lot of reason to be nice to Emile anymore, right? Like, they'll have a bunch of backup from their side, and a ship that more directly wants what they want with a person they totally respect. Emile needs some leverage to keep that from going against him. But he has something, because he knows that there is something that he knows Dash cares about, and that's Dash's life's work. And Vert and Dash seem to like each other enough that maybe that'll count for both of them. But Dash cares a lot about his life's work in having made the mind of Ironside, which is currently inoperable. It's not inside of a working chassis or anything like that. They have the chassis around. They have the mind around. I think what Emile needs to do is make sure that that body is locked up. But more importantly, what Emile needs to do is he gets access to the mind. Like they last had access to it in the med bay, and Emile is, in there and everything. And he grabs whatever hard drive, the broken hard drive that has Ironside's mind on it. And he's going to give Fern a task, which is basically like, you stay on the ship, stay with this hard drive. If I don't come back, use your electromagnetic pull on it to utterly wipe this thing. And I think Emile does this all in front of Vert and Dash to make it perfectly clear as he's looking Dash in the eyes while he says all of this. It's like, look, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but I feel like you got a lot of reason to throw me to the wolves once we're over there. I wouldn't even really be able to fully blame you. It would just make a lot of sense. So, just know that if you choose that, you're choosing to throw away your life's work because there's no way you're going to be able to stop Fern before they just utterly wipe Ironside. You're saying goodbye to him.
Yes, I understand.
Dash, I think, turns to Vert and has kind of like pleading eyes, saying like,
please don't. I don't think I have enough time left in my life to make another one.
Vert nods his head, looks over to Emile and says, I don't like your approach, but yeah, I get it too. Let's go on board. And so the three of them go there, and because of the results of the former moves that we did, I'm not going to roll anything in additional to determine, like, does Tycoon hold up his end of the bargain? Does he only come with two people? Like, we had a strong hit. Like, everybody agreed they're going to stick to these terms. So it's Emile, Dash, and Vert. Emile, I think, is going to be inside of his magnetized suit just in case. And then Tycoon and a couple of other people on the crew that show up. Fern is left behind with their task. And they all meet, and Emile kind of gestures to the other two and says, oh, he came. Just as promised. I don't know what exactly is going to convince you of what you need convincing of, but like gestures to him individually. Vert and Dash. I'll let you take it away from here so that you don't think I'm, leading them too much or whatever. I don't know how you think I'm the one coaxing them. They clearly outnumber me, and well, look at that guy. Head clearly gesturing towards Vert. So Tycoon kind of steps a little bit closer and says to them both,
is it true what he's been saying, that you're not under any kind of duress? You come here of your own volition and have control of the situation. By all the amount that he is talking, it seems like he is the one in control, that he is truly the captain of the ship. You tell me this isn't so?
And so, like, what I want to get across here is the idea that, like, if Emile doesn't step in to try and if change this, like, the truth is going to come out. And I think he is going to let it come out. So, like, the conversation continues, and Dash says,
it is true that he is the captain of the ship and is the one making decisions at the moment. However, it is also true that we do not do this under direct duress. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the only reason that we are on board the Stardust and safe right now, as opposed to utterly stranded on a planet, is that Emile Spencer rescued us. He has admittedly asked very little in return and has been very forgiving. He got us up off the planet, and for now, despite being an enemy, our agenda is currently aligned. And so I ask, with great respect for your wisdom, that as a favor to another of our kind, that you let us take care of this situation on our own and not muddy the waters. Are you sure that that is what you want? After all, he has a considerable bounty on his head. We could split it if you wanted the additional numbers to be able to take him down. I make no illusions of our ability to do so. After all, this is a man who killed many, many of the people on the secret outpost of Concord. He blew them up. You may not know the details of what made him an enemy, but I do. This is a man who came claiming innocence and a desire for diplomacy. And when everybody agreed that this was what would happen, that he would help everybody secure the power supply of the very ship that you come flying on, he blew them up and stole the ship, leaving everyone behind.
Yeah, I think it's at this that Emile is going to have to interrupt and say his side. He's not going to let this just continue. He interrupts and says, excuse me, but I believe you have a certain version of the events that happened that day that I don't feel completely captures the reality of the situation. And his voice is like kind of quavering a little bit. Like it's a very emotional subject to him. Everything that happened that day on Cinder, he carries with him every day. It's like, so you can see like his eyes are almost like welling up a little bit. It is not the full representation of what happened that day. I may be a biased source when speaking on behalf of myself, but I have to imagine you've gotten this from Valkyrie, who is definitely biased on it as well. And more importantly, she's wrong. The bomb went off not from my doing, but due to what was functionally a virus on my comlink. The mind of the AI that once dominated this ship, the Stardust, captured onto my comlink and blew up the bomb as a way to try and get back at me for having taken it out to begin with. It did all of this as a kind of revenge that was exceptionally effective. It's worked. All of your people are after me now. But outside of all of that, not only was it not my doing, I had no intentions to blow everybody up, but it is my every intention to give your people the power supply back that they were trying to get. It's a work in progress. I have one in mind. I'm going to get it.
When? How long have you been going to get it? And are you simply lying to yourself about all of this so that you can feel better? Was it not you who set up the bomb as a kind of way to have leverage? No doubt you've done something similar to these folk here, and it is why they're being so compliant.
And when this moment comes, when all this information about what Emile did is out in the air, and like the emotions are high, we can see that Vert is breathing very heavily, as if he's just restraining a kind of rage, because he's never been as comfortable putting this all aside as Dash has been. And this is all bringing it up to the surface. And the reason I say this is because way back in the session where we were playing as Vert, we established something that I've never been able to pay off until this point. You may remember, in the outro of that episode, we randomly determined when Vert got irradiated by the radioactive mantis creature, we said that he was going to get his own kind of mutation. Just like Emile got his, which allowed him to like burst out EMP, Vert was going to get his own kind of mutation. And we've not yet had an opportunity for it to come up. But I think in these kind of emotional highs, sort of the same thing that brought about Emile's, the emotional high stakes are going to trigger this to finally happen. Now, in the outro of that episode, I rolled the prompts Create Innocence. I asked you to come up with some ideas about what that would mean, and I hope you've done so by now, because I'm about to tell you what my idea was. Because I thought about this too, like many, many sessions ago, but it's not had a good opportunity to come up. But I think this is the perfect moment for it. So Vert, shaking and furious, grabs Emile by the shoulders and looks him directly in the eye, like lifts him a little bit up off the floor, holding him eye to eye, and stares at him with an intensity that is just like, it's like you can almost literally see flames in his eyes as he says the words,
"Is this true? Did you blow everybody up? Did you make a bomb and blow up our most secret outpost? Tell me what actually happened that day."
Now, the reason I bring up his mutation, my interpretation of Create Innocence is that I decided that it was going to be like innocence in the sense of inability to lie. I decided that I think it would be really cool if Vert's mutation was a kind of like truth compulsion. Like for those of you who have played Dungeons and Dragons, it's like he can make a zone of truth by staring into somebody's eyes just right. And right now he probably doesn't have a lot of control over this power, but by staring into somebody's eyes just right, he can almost like hypnotize them into only being able to say the truth. Now, I think a tricky person could still like find like ways to spin the truth to imply other things, but like you have to say things that are true while you're under this compulsion. And maybe it may be to the point where you can't hold back. It just depends on the person. Now, I think in another circumstance, I might have Emile like face danger or something as a reaction to this imminent threat to try and avoid telling the truth. But for one, he doesn't know enough about what's incoming. And two, I don't think that he has any reason, like he's not lying to begin with. He wants to tell the truth. I think he's just going to feel in this process that not only does he want to, but he has to. So this eye contact is made, and Emile has this kind of like seizing grip on it. It feels almost like a grip on his throat, where any thought he might have towards telling a more honeyed truth or leaving out components feels literally harder to say. Like every time he imagines saying those things, he can like feel his throat seizing up. And the only things that want to come out are the literal facts about the day. And I think it's clear to everyone in the room that there's something going on here. Like Vert's eyes yield a kind of clear power to them that like everybody can see there's something happening here. I think even Emile's eyes also kind of reveal that something is going on here. They go a sort of vacant and change hue. They demonstrate that there's kind of an enthrallment happening. And Emile says all those things again, but perhaps like he swears by it all, probably now at this point in tears, which I am not a talented enough actor in this moment to represent those tears in a convincing way. And I'm not willing to pause this recording long enough to try and like get myself in that headspace to be able to. So you'll just have to imagine that part. But Emile is like, it was a terrible day. Absolutely terrible. I was desperate at the time. I had just crash landed on the planet from my own ship, the Reacher. It had crashed into the ground. I was doing everything I could to survive, and I get to the place desperate for any kind of shelter or help. They opened up the doors, and I thought I had it. And then immediately started trying to kill me, and I was desperate. I had to do anything I could, so I made the bomb. I made a self-destruct. I activated it with a contingency plan just as a way to try and make sure that I could have even moments more time. And it worked for a time. I didn't want to do it, but having that kind of contingency allowed me to find out what I could do. Your people, they wanted the power core. They sent me on an additional suicide mission, and I did it. I did the suicide mission. I was successful at it. I got the AI out of there, and then, yeah, I did something reckless and stupid. I was greedy. I wanted an AI for myself. You know how hard they are to make? Gesturing over to Dash. It could take a lifetime to develop one. A full, true AI of that kind of capability? I wanted to be able to study it. And so I copied it onto my comlink. Careful to section it off, but it still found a way to come back. It took over the rest of my comlink, and I'm certain that it's the reason the bomb went off. It waited for its moment and connected to it. It sent the contingency plan through my comlink, blew us all up, and then from there, everything was lost. Then it was desperation all over again because, of course, it looked like I betrayed everybody, and I didn't. I didn't betray anyone. Not intentionally. So I ran. I ran because I knew that there was no coming back from that point. They were all going to kill me, and nothing I said could take that away. And I am going to make him face danger on this part, actually. Because I think even compelled to tell the truth as he does, there is so much pain behind the idea of what happened with Shark that he was trapped in. Like, everything that happened in the rubble is so painful that I think he's going to try and resist that. So we're going to do this as a face danger with Heart, because this is about resolve command. This is about the resolve aspect of Heart. So with Heart, he's going to try and conceal that part of the truth. And we get a weak hit that I cannot burn momentum to make any better. It did roll a 10. So you succeed, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move. I think clearly the suffer move here would be a hit to his spirit. It's just, in order to not talk about the thing, he still has to confront it hard enough to like really bring it to top of mind and like force it down and not say what wants to naturally come out. He leaves that part out successfully, but it hurts him all over again. I'm not going to even have him roll to endure that stress. We're just going to move on. Vert's eyes take on their more normal look again. And he somehow understands he receives this information in a way that tells him, like, he knows on the inside, none of that could have possibly been a lie. It had to come out as it did. Emile told the truth. And Dash is like looking over to him, the more confused one, and goes,
What was that? What did you do to him? Yes, I also would like to know how you have managed to get someone to say so much.
I don't know. I was so angry.
But he's telling the truth. Every word of that is true.
And there are a lot of glances around the room over what exactly to do with that in mind. But that's, of course, a question for next time. The Left Behind podcast series is a podcast made by a person, that person being me, and, well, like all people, I sure like getting feedback because it makes me feel all kinds of amazing inside to know that people have been listening. Be sure to send whatever thoughts you have over to starforgepod@gmail.com, or if you're a member of the Ironsworn Discord and have been following my creator posts on there, you're certainly welcome to continue giving your feedback on there. I know certainly some people already have. Makes me feel great every time. Really helps keep kind of the fire lit to know that somebody is going to be listening to this, so get that next episode out there. Bring up the excitement for it. Not to say I'm not excited every time I get to record one of these, but activation energy is really hard. So again, starforgepod@gmail.com. You have no idea how much it means. Oh right, I was doing a different mic setup this episode. That would be something you could tell me about. Did you notice? Did it sound better or not? I was definitely speaking a lot closer to the mic, which had positives and negatives. Certainly more often I demonstrated how I need to get a pop filter, and some of that I was not able to edit out. But I'm hopeful that the signal to noise was a lot better and you're able to hear my voice better. I don't know, that's probably the type of thing that only I care about and I just imagine other people do, but let me know your thoughts. Again, starforgepod@gmail.com or over on the Discord. Also, did you like my totally not Werner Herzog voice, or did you find it more distracting? Again, thoughts at the same places. But with that all said, play me out, music.